Sekeres Price for Wednesday, June 19th, 2024, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center. If you're thinking of hosting a company party, give the Wall Center sales team a call. They'll walk you through it, 604-331-1000. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price, Grace Asset and Switches, conducting things. Big show coming up, all brought to you by Applewood Auto Group.
And the fine folks at Apple would like you to direct your attention to Applewood Infinity in Langley and the fabulous deals that they've got right now. A fabulous deal on all vehicles, in fact. Go check them out right now at Applewood Infinity in Langley. And right now, you can step behind the wheel of a QX60 with lease rates from 0.99% on all trims. The 2024s are in at Applewood Infinity in Langley.
Well, first things first, apologies for the long delay here. More than 2 hours late on this program, usually 11:30 a.m. Pacific time if this is your first time. We had a technical matter crop up in the final 30, 45 minutes before we were about to do the show, and it's taken some time to resolve. So thank you to everybody for your patience. We're back at it here. Better late than never, I guess. Poll question.
Something like that, yeah.
Beautiful afternoon outside. I could have done something with this.
We'd be out here that day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Are you willing to lose Nikita Zadorov in free agency if it means signing Jake Guentzel? Yes or no? You can vote at Sekeres Price on Twitter, X, or YouTube. I voted no here, Blake, and I know I'm in the minority. It's the counterintuitive position, but as I've been arguing with you for the last couple of weeks, I don't want them to forge a top-heavy team. I think you're better off with a deep team, particularly the way Tocchet plays hockey. And so for me, I'd prefer to have two forwards for the price of Guentzel and bring back the defense, keep it as robust as it was last year. I can understand that Guentzel's the shiny object. I can understand that he's an elite winger and that in the near term might be exactly what Elias Pettersson needs. I'm also not huge on giving 7-year contracts to 30-year-olds, and particularly 30-year-old wingers who aren't even all situation wingers. So I voted no accordingly.
I think I am willing to lose Nikita Zadorov. I think he's outpriced himself for what he is anyhow. And after the Canucks have already paid a handsome price for Filip Hronek, I don't think you want to risk overpaying for a second or maybe even a third pair of defensemen, depending on the performance that he's going to give you. So there's other defensemen out there. I'm going to say that you can probably find a guy that fits the bill of Nikita Zadorov at less of a price that allows you to get Guentzel.
Where are you on potentially trading a pick for the exclusive negotiating rights with Guentzel over the next 10, 11 days?
We need to know what that pick is.
Let's say it's a third-round pick.
Oh, man.
Too rich?
Pretty rich. Yeah. It's pretty rich.
How do you feel about a sign and trade where Carolina signs him and flips him to you so he gets the 8-year deal at the cost of some low-level draft pick?
First of all, I think you do your due diligence in the back channels, and the skullduggery does happen, folks.
Mm-hmm.
If you're pretty sure that there's significant interest from Guentzel, via the grapevine, agents talk, then sure.
It's such a canard. I mean, there's so much tampering that goes on.
Right. So if you're getting good vibes through the grapevine, maybe that third-round pick is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
As for the sign and trade, 8 years for a guy that age, I mean, 7 is hard enough to stomach. I don't think you go searching for that 8th year. And if he wants the 8 years, then that cap hit has to go down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up to him.
Yeah, so there might be benefit there both ways there from the Canucks. The Canucks may look at it and go, oh, we'd much prefer to pay that on the average annual value. We're willing to go the 8th year at the cost of
if it's $9 million for 7 years, are you willing to go 8.2 for 8?
Yeah, something like that. And I'm not huge on 7 or 8 year deals for 30-year-olds. I think as a matter of philosophy, you've got to be very, very careful walking into those sorts of arrangements. All right, let's get to our top story. Filip Hronek, he speaks. And he seemed happy to do it.
Amazing.
It's the damnedest thing what $58 million in the bank will do, huh?
It's the damnedest thing what I'm hoping wasn't talking to was given, because he gave an 9-minute Zoom today.
Mm-hmm.
Lived to tell the tale.
Right.
Gave some decent answers.
Right.
All went fine.
So let's hear from the newly minted Vancouver Canucks defenseman, because one of the themes that was explored in the questioning to Patrick Allvin yesterday, and we'll hear from the Canucks GM here in a bit, is that, hey, with all of that money comes added responsibility. Here's Hronek on being challenged by his GM.
I mean, it's great. It's why you play the game, to have a challenge in front of you and trying to get better and better every season. And it's nice. I feel the trust from the management and from Jim and Patrick and from the coaches as well. So it's nice, and it motivates me a lot for sure.
He feels the trust. I think that's part and parcel of what got him to the bargaining table, and got him to the table at $7.25 million, which is, for my money, very well done by the Vancouver Canucks. I was surprised a little to hear this from Hronek, because he strikes me as already a pretty strong, stout guy. And yet when asked about what he needs to work on, he identified strength. Take a listen.
I mean, this question is not really for me, but either way, it's I'm excited to do either way. We will see how it's gonna go. So I had a lot of fun with playing with Quinn. At the same time, I have no problem to play with someone else. We will see. It's the question for the coaches, I guess, and we will see when the season starts.
Yeah, that was not.
That was talking about loading up on the top pair,
right?
Versus him having his own pairing,
right? If we don't have the clip, Grady,
I do.
Okay,
I have them switched.
All right,
I'm sorry. Let's play that one.
Okay, please.
We get stronger like every year, and even more. And I think that's the biggest thing, to get myself stronger and make sure I can keep the strongness like during the whole season. It's the biggest thing.
So there you have it. He wants to, I mean, it almost sounds like he faded a little bit as the season went along, that it wasn't just the injury, that there was more there that he thought he could work on.
Well, I think
he's in just total denial.
I think it's the physicality, the abuse that you take over 82 games. He's not a large defenseman by any stretch. You get tenderized, you get pounded. And, maybe part of that is the stoutness. They were saying arm. Everybody was reporting the bandage on the arm. That can be from a hit up against the boards, that maybe he feels that if he's stronger, maybe he's able to withstand that sort of punishment. Who knows? But he's not the biggest guy. He's not he's not, a brick shithouse either. Like he's muscular, but he's not super stout. So maybe he's just talking about, filling out a little bit more.
As for the contract, and we were able to get to it yesterday, but look, I've seen and heard people talking about how he's getting paid more than a 2 and closer to a number 1 defenseman. And I hear that. It's fair when you look at some of the other contracts around the league. That all said, we're looking at the first significant jump in the salary cap in a multitude of years, not to mention the fact the cap is expected to jump up even further in subsequent years. There was an interesting tweet from Jay Fresh Hockey on this. As a matter of fact, he was looking at a couple of the contracts that had been signed already this year, and basically prorating them as things went along, as the years went along. And when you get to the Filip Hronek contract and you take a look at it over the next few years, Jay Fresh has it looking like a $5.4 million deal in year 8. He's got it looking as a $6.1 million deal in year 4. That's like comparable dollars to today.
Percentage of cap.
Percentage of cap.
Yeah.
So, those are all numbers I can very much live with. In fact, none of the Hronek years on this contract are valued at more than $7 million.
Yeah.
In terms of what you're looking at today with percentage of the cap.
Even for next year, immediately, because of the cap bump.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
he get this 7.25 feels like a percentage of the cap for the cap that we just let go. Like that. He's getting paid in 2023, 24 numbers, except it's going to kick in for 24, 25. So there's almost, I won't call it savings, but it's savings on the original number that you signed him to.
Yes. So, look, his track record isn't the longest. I can understand the concerns there. We also have to understand he had all the leverage here, folks, in terms of the trade price that the Canucks paid, in terms of the arbitration case that could have dropped next month, in terms of being the defense partner for Quinn Hughes, your captain, who may very well win the Norris Trophy.
But the question was leverage towards what? Like, he had leverage to get a raise. No one's doubting that by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, he had leverage in terms of if you're not willing to meet some of these demands, then let's go to ARB or trade me.
Right, but that's only a problem if he's asking for an unreasonable amount. And in the end,
well, he didn't.
He didn't. No. So there was no leverage needed.
And look, I also understand that he doesn't anchor his own pair. I was a big subscriber at one point to that theory with Hronek that I'd like to see him anchor his own pair before committing the money. The fact of the matter is, it just works so well with Quinn Hughes. You're talking about the best defense pair in the league at the beginning of last season for a month, 2 months, however long that lasted. One of the top ones out there, period. And I think that he will wind up anchoring the second pair at some point when the Vancouver Canucks have superior defensemen in here. Like when Tom Waylander, for example, graduates to the NHL and gets his feet wet and as they hope, becomes the right shot top 4 defenseman that they're looking for. You're still using some veterans here on the defensive side of things to patch the dam. So I think as the quality on defense for the Vancouver Canucks goes up, I think you'll also see Filip Hronek weaned off that Quinn Hughes partnership. And yes, he will have to be better when anchoring his own pair.
Which is why I would be tempted. You talk about doing a couple of other wingers instead of Guentzel. If I'm going to step away from Guentzel in any way, shape, or form, I mean, I'd be tempted to chase Pesce and then a $4 million winger.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned Pesce maybe even after this move.
Yeah.
Because I thought that Patrick Allvin yesterday, and we're going to hear from the GM here in a moment, I thought Allvin yesterday when he was talking about what's becoming clear is that we aren't going to be able to sign all our own free agents. Now, I think that means Lindholm, but combined with a couple of other things, he talked about Juleson being a top 6 guy. He talked about Colton McWard knocking on the door. They re-signed Mark Friedman today, who, as we know, can play both sides. I wonder if Allvin is sort of preparing himself in the market that they're not going to get Tyler Myers back.
Maybe.
Or I'm wondering if the Canucks may have overplayed their hand there, going, okay, Tyler, we know you want to stay here. You live in Kelowna. You got specific family needs here. Here's the offer. And the Myers camp went, whoa, no, not doing that.
Or it's their way of messaging.
Yeah.
Tyler, you want to come back. We're talking
exactly
cut rate deal. And you already knew it was going to be a deal for Myers, but it sounds like they're pressuring. Or to your point, they plan on loading up with a certified top 4. And then whatever they fill in 5-6 is whatever they find 5-6.
Yeah. Let's hear from Patrick Allvin talking about how Filip Hronek wanted a long-term deal. And he acknowledges here that age and right-handedness were factors.
I think when you start a negotiation or a conversation with Filip and his agent, I think that was a preference from their end to stay in Vancouver for long term. And then obviously we as an organization need to look at our projected roster moving forward here, but we felt comfortable with the age where Filip is and where we believe his game could go at, and also that finding a right shot defenseman at that age and his quality made us feel comfortable going to 8 year. And obviously there's two sides that it needs to work with the AAV, and that's why sometimes discussions or negotiations take a little bit longer.
Yeah, that part about the go forward here. Alvin was, also asked about anchoring his own pair and where Hronek fits and all of those things over the totality of this contract. And he acknowledged, and we'll hear from him here, that they do plan to use him in a more offensive role.
I think there is part of Filip's game where we can utilize him more offensively. If that's by having him with Quinn Hughes or having him running in another pair, being the main guy, how you utilize him on the power play. But I do think that this was a great experience and learning experience for Filip, playing those meaningful games in the end, getting those 13 playoff games. So I believe that he has another level to get to, and I believe that he's capable of getting to another level and finding his consistency more. I think he's a very competitive player, skates well. I think he moves the puck well, and he is a guy that fits well in our dressing room here.
What did you hear from the GM there?
Well, I fully agree. I mean, I think we have to say that we've seen the last of Carson Soucy running power play 2.
Oh, please. Yes.
It should be Filip Hronek's job. And it shouldn't be a 2D-man unit either. I mean, if all goes according to plan this summer, when healthy, the Canucks should be able to populate 2 power plays with four forwards and a defenseman. So let's hope that's the case. And he did leave open the possibility of him running his own pair. I think you need a guy then like a Pesce to be a candidate alongside Quinn Hughes if you're going to give Hronek and Soucy or Hronek and whomever a chance to be a different unit. So we'll see. He left the door open on a couple of fronts there.
Yeah, as we went over yesterday, this is a contract that is interestingly structured. There is a 15-team no-trade clause between 2028 and 2031, so more than half the league you can deal with on the player as he ages. It's also buyoutable in the final couple of years, just with the way it is structured. A lot of the signing bonus coming up front here, a lot of heavy salaried years coming up front here. Fresh Hockey, Hronek is a 2AD who plays effectively on both special teams, found success in production on the top pairing this year, which the model attributes to mostly a combination of Hughes and some on-ice shooting percentage. Some consistency issues, says Fresh Hockey. But again, it became a devil or do you want to be on the market for a top pair, right shot, all situations defenseman. And it's also pretty clear that the Vancouver Canucks valued getting this deal done first and tidily and orderly so that you can go on out and have more informed meetings and discussions with your own free agents, not to mention the crop that you're free to talk to and sign on July 1st.
Well, and they might have their own sort of plan A, plan B, plan C's. Like if Guentzel all of a sudden evaporates on them, okay, well, then what next? Maybe then they go to a tier 2 forward and open up some money to, again, get another right shot defenseman. So they have to be a little bit pliable. By getting this deal signed, they've got peace of mind that their backs aren't against the wall on a pretty critical front to know how the jigsaw puzzle gets put together for next season. So it allows them to be open to a bunch more plans than they would have otherwise been.
Yeah, should also mention when we talk about that right side of defense, Dolly Walls dropped Yanni Hakanpää and Alexander Carrier of interest in Nashville and Dallas. Of course, Carrier we saw in the playoffs here. So, I do sort
Those
of
would be Myers replacements, though, wouldn't they?
Well, but when you say Pesce, I wonder if it's someone like that. Like Pesce is pretty. That's an expensive neighborhood.
Yeah.
I wonder if they look at Carrier or Hakanpää and think that can be a second pair defenseman, and we backfill with Juleson and Friedman if we don't get Myers, or we just sign one of those guys and we sign Tyler Myers and we let them figure out who's going to play second pair, who's going to play third pair.
Like, unless you're going with a Montour or a Pesce, then I would suggest you bring back Tyler Myers and then you sign somebody else, like a Carrier, if you will. I don't know that you want two guys on $1 million deals as your 5-6 pairing. I think you got to be careful about that. Unless you're going with 4 studs.
Right.
Where those guys are getting 10 minutes a game.
Right. But at this stage of the proceedings, I would not consider Carson Soucy that stud.
He'd be the least studly of the 4.
Yeah. Yes. So you have to upgrade there. You're already paying Soucy a decent ticket. I'm not sure if that structure is going to work for them. Look, there is still work to be done on defense. That's sort of the overarching headline here. Hronek signed, still work to be done on defense. Whether that's Myers or a replacement, whether that's Myers and another right side guy, and of course, Big Nikita. Is that ship sailed, or do you think he and his agent are coming back to you? Are they going to blink? Do they like Vancouver so much that they're willing to come back at something closer to your price tag as opposed to what they can get on the open market? Because I do think there will be some drunken sailor contracts this July 1st. NHL general managers have a pretty long track record of when they have money and they have cap space, they use it. We had one of those guys here in Vancouver. We needn't reflect back on the Benning era on July 1st. As Ferraro used to always say, take his phone away on July 1st. You're going to have some general managers who would have been better off having their phone taken away this July 1st, given that the cap is going up for the first time in a number of years.
And the one spot you really don't want to overpay on is on the wing.
A winger.
And so if
the would-be top 6 winger that isn't the top 6 winger, that's just about the worst contract you can get, you can sign.
And so if they deem that the winger
should at very least give you the utility of being a bottom 6 center, whereas the winger in a bottom 6 capacity, unless it's a penalty killer or something like that, there's almost nothing there.
So if you're pretty sure the winger market's going to be cray-cray, then you hold on to Zadorov maybe, and you go find another defenseman, and you just have maybe one of the best defense cores on the planet, and then
you're coming around to my side. I like it.
Well, but you have to be open to all this.
Yeah, no, you do.
And if you're getting the vibes that Jake Guentzel is asking for 9.7 and so-and-so is asking for 7.8 and all.
Yeah.
And you're just like, wow, that's crazy. I can't do that. Then Zadorov's a willing participant here. You've got Hronek already. That I do think you need another significant defenseman. But if you think they're less likely to be wildly overpaid than the wingers, then maybe you go down that route as well.
I just don't get me wrong. I really like Jake Guentzel as a player. But is he twice the player that a Jake DeBrusk or a Teravainen or an Arvidsson or some of the middle-class wingers are on this free agent crop? I mean, if you think so, then go ahead and fill your boots. But, the middle-class winger, which also gives you the ability to add a second forward. I know there are a lot of people out there who think third-line center is a need, and I would agree. I'm okay with Suter there, but you'd like to upgrade. So, very interesting concoctions here. Awaiting Patrick Allvin and the Vancouver Canucks in free agency. And speaking of centers, I saw the piece in the Hockey News from Adam Kirsenblatt talking about Bluger should be a bigger priority. Primary penalty killer. He led all their forwards in ice time, shorthanded ice time in the regular season and the playoffs. He had his best even strength season to date. Expected goals for 57.86. Was over 50% in Corsi. It's looking like a 2-year deal at $2.2 million per year. That's what AFP Analytics has talked about with Bluger. I know you think that's a little bit rich. He actually even did okay in this time away from Dakota Joshua and Connor Garland last year. And that's another thing that we haven't necessarily considered as much, Blake, particularly given that Alvin has so many times mentioned he likes having the three centers. If the third line center, or at least the perfect third line center, is unachievable, unattainable, do we see something where they prioritize fourth line center and make sure they have four centers that they can really count on, as opposed to having to hope that Nils Oman or hope that Atu Ratu can be a solution for you at center ice?
If you could delete one of the other contracts off the books, and I'd be okay bringing back Teddy Bluger. I don't mind him as a player, but I
so that's a Mikheyev thing. If you can get rid of Mikheyev,
sure,
and create extra cap space,
yeah. I mean, like, what are you doing with Pius Suter? Right? What's the utility of Pius Suter even? And I'm okay with a lot of these players, but I
think you want to move Suter back to the middle in a bottom six role.
Right. So he'd be your third line center then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, he was masquerading to a degree as a top six winger.
Teddy Bluger doesn't hurt you.
No.
But he's certainly not going to help you much.
No, but your penalty killing is losing a bunch of the high minute guys as well. So I can understand if that would be a greater consideration for them. As for Mikheyev, I know people are wondering, how is he not tradable when Barclay Goodrow gets claimed off waivers today by the San Jose Sharks with 3 years remaining on his contract from the New York Rangers? I mean, Mike Greer giving his old buddy Chris Drury a get-out-of-jail free card on that player.
Not insignificant.
And I know Goodrow is a former Shark, and I know he's a cup winner, and I know you can talk about leadership and all that, blah, 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 in terms of helping out Macklin, celebrate the intangibles. No, but Blake Benning argued that with us.
Oh, I know.
Other GMs argue that. But to take a $3.6 million average annual salary for the next 3 years,
it's copious amounts of money for a guy that is amongst the worst analytics performers in all of the National Hockey League.
Right. He can play center ice. There is a distinction between him and Ilya Mikheyev, though he is older.
Yeah.
So all the intel we got, and a lot of it from Frank Seravalli, said that, the Canucks have been trying on Ilya Mikheyev, and no one is willing to just flat take the player at full contract value. That they want the Canucks to retain or to add something to Ilya Mikheyev. So I'm sure those efforts will continue, but you're getting close to the point on that file, Blake, where really it can become moot. I mean, if you don't get that done by July 1st, you're going to see most of the free agents come off the board.
Yeah.
Maybe there's still some value in getting rid of that salary beyond July 1st, but the pickings will be slimmer in terms of who's available in free agency. In previous years, we've seen some guys and like decent players like Pius Suter linger into late July, late August without deals. I just don't get the sense that's going to be the case this year, with more teams flusher with cap space than they have been in the past. I think you're going to see something going back to a more conventional July, and that is really after the first week, you're pretty much scraping bottom of the barrel type guys who you're hoping can play on your third pair or your fourth line, or are depth players more so than guys who could actually slot into top nine or second pair roles.
One of Mantha, Bertuzzi, DeBrusk is going to sign for $5 million or just above 5.2. Somebody's going to have to settle for something in the low fives.
Well, some would say that's not settling for those players. I mean,
I just, in a crazy cap world. Okay, let's say five on the nose.
DeBrusk, yeah. Okay, so DeBrusk, AFP has DeBrusk at 5.8 over 5 years. Bertuzzi, they have at 5.25 over 4 years. Mantha, they have a 4.75 over 3 years.
Yeah. Okay, so it stands. Somebody's getting $5 million there of the three.
Mm-hmm.
You get that
perhaps
guy,
even a smidge less.
You get that guy at 4.9, $5 million,
right?
And you retain $1 million on Mikheyev. you're getting that upgrade for $1.2 million. So if you put in that frame, shouldn't people be okay with retaining $1 million on Ilya Mikheyev? It's a $1.2 million upgrade.
Yep.
For a guy that is potentially going to double the goal output of Mikheyev. So if I'm the Canucks, I start to flirt with that $1 million retained.
Speaking of July 1st, catch the Daily Face-Off live. Free agency special with Frank Seravalli and friends, Carter Hutton, Colby Cohen, former National Hockey Leaguers. That starts at 8 a.m. Pacific time on July 1st. The Daily Face-Off live free agency special. Now, we mentioned a waiver claim, but there were 2 big boy trades today in the National Hockey League.
Yeah.
2 days off again in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And how about this? We're going to game 6. Things are getting a little more fun.
It seems almost a little bit suspicious. Like Gary was like, I know you guys have got all this stuff backed up.
Hey,
do it on this day.
And there would come a point in time where I, as a manager, would go to my team president and my owner and say, tell Gary to fuck off. I've got business to do. No, honestly, I've got business to do. And he's got a 5-day break between the conference finals and the Stanley Cup final. And then he's taking 2-day breaks each and every time we travel from Alberta to Florida. Sorry, Gary, my off season has started. Our old friend Jacob Markstrom is headed to New Jersey. The Calgary Flames retaining more than 30% of his salary, $6 million over the next couple of years. And in return, they get hulking defenseman Kevin Ball, 6'6", and was he 230, 240? That's a big son of a gun. And a 2025 top 10 protected pick. Interesting from Calgary because they now have 2 first-round picks this year, next year, and in 2026 after all of their dealings. They also get a defenseman that Crick Conroy said he coveted. $1 million guy this year, RFA to be, although club controlled here for a couple more years. So the makeover continues in Calgary, and they're going to turn over the goaltending to Dan Vladar and Dustin Wolf,
which in the end may not. And Markstrom got off to a fabulous analytical start. He was
faded as the year went along.
That's right. He came back to the field,
bounced back after a poor year the season prior. He was great a couple of years back. It's kind of been one great year, one mediocre year for Markstrom.
Greater point is, I don't know that they necessarily are guaranteed to be worse in goal with Dustin Wolf. Like it's about time that he arrives after being a .930 save percentage kind of guy in the AHL. Like you probably feel fairly confident giving him the reins, and he's got a capable backup too. And then Ball just helps the blue line. I mean, that's a pretty decent looking blue line in Calgary.
Well, Uyghur Anderson, sure. The thing with Calgary, they can re-sign Shillington, and also you've now made trades for Markstrom and Tanev, the old Canucks. And incidentally, when we look back to what happened or what didn't happen after the Canucks bubble run in 2020, Blake, Markstrom goes on, signs a deal in Calgary, gives them some very good work in at least a couple of the seasons, and still has trade value to the point where you get a young $1 million defenseman and a first-round pick. Tanev goes on to Calgary, gives them some good work, still returns them a couple of assets as a rental at the deadline. Toffoli goes there, gets moved on. He also returns assets to the Calgary Flames. Like, wow.
I mean, there weren't a lot of people complained about the assets they got back in a couple of those trades.
No, but different GMs would have acquired different assets. But, and in the Calgary case, Kevin Ball and then Grushnikov, the defenseman they got from Dallas in the Tanev deal. The one issue there is that that's a lot of no offense defensemen. That's a lot of pure defenders that you have acquired. And hey, maybe that's what's going to fit Calgary's bill as they go younger in goal and they lean on more goal prevention.
Well, Hunter Brustevich is all offense though. So if he pans out for them.
Yeah. Then the second huge trade we saw, and this one absolutely earth-shaking in the NHL, but Pierre-Luc Dubois, whom the LA Kings traded for just a year ago with the Winnipeg Jets, Gave up some pretty good hockey players. Gabe Vilardi, Alex Iafallo, Rasmus Kupari. There was a pick involved there as well. They turn around, they signed Dubois to the 8-year extension. This a player who had forced his way out of Columbus and Winnipeg. And days before his no trade kicks in after a 40-point, most disappointing first year in LA, they ship him to Washington for Darcy Kemper. Kemper, who's got 3 years left in his deal. So LA, have they solved their issues in goal? Question mark. But they've gained $3+ million in cap space over the next 3 years while Kemper's deal is still going. And they get out of the final 4 years of Pierre-Luc Dubois' deal, lest his contract look like Louis Eriksson's one day.
Yeah, it's possible.
I mean, it's a big swing from Washington, and everybody has the joke on Twitter that they bought cap friendly so that people don't see how bad Pierre-Luc Dubois' contract is. It's quite a competitive advantage trade from the Washington Capitals.
No, but it's the second get out of jail free. I mean, between Goodrow going to San Jose for nothing, peeling that off to get rid of all those back years. Now, Kemper's not cheap. And he's not that great anymore.
But if he's your solution in goal, then it's a double plus trade.
Yeah, it's a big if.
It's a big if.
He was an 890 goalie.
No, but
year.
Blake, even if you've got an additional $3+ million to work with here in the intervening 3 years,
yeah,
right?
That's what I'm saying. You get rid of the bad years, which is maybe all
cap space, and you gain cap space in the here and now, and you may actually have a solution to your goaltending. Or at least part of a solution. So
no, it's a win.
It's a no-brainer.
But how much of a win we'll find out. Again, Kemper's 34 already. And he's making, 5 something? So you're saving some and you're shedding some years, and all that's good. It's not quite the slam dunk, but here's the thing. It happened a lot easier than it could have. Like, this might have been a contract that everybody's just like, I am not touching Pierre-Luc Dubois. Like, I would not have been surprised if other teams took that approach. Like, wild horses couldn't make me acquire that player. Like, his reputation precedes him.
Yeah, attitudinal issues there.
And so for them to extricate themselves from that, tidy, very tidy.
Could you imagine if the Canucks had a similar option available to them for Louis Eriksson after the first year?
Right. Yeah.
And I do think Dubois will wind up being hard to be worse than Louis Eriksson, but I do think Dubois will wind up being a better player going forward here.
Well, his year last year is already better than any Louis Eriksson,
right? And he's still reasonably young, whereas Eriksson, when he signed here, wasn't particularly young.
Well, and someday maybe, because he's got all the tools.
Yeah,
maybe he figures it out.
Colin in Planning is asking on Twitter, does the Goodrow acquisition have anything to do with San Jose getting to the floor? And the answer is it might, but there are better ways to get to the floor.
Yeah,
than taking on this guy at $3 million for the next 3 years. Like, to get to the floor, you only need a 1-year guy, right? So I think it has more to do with getting to the floor. I think they probably think, hey, this is a culture guy.
And they're pretty close to the floor anyway, and they've only got 7 forwards signed, so they'll get to the floor just fine.
Yep. Let's get to, just lastly, Jersey's 10th overall pick was supposedly in play, and this is a 2025 pick that they're sending to Calgary for Markstrom. So it's going to be interesting to see if Tom Fitzgerald and that group still want to bolster the NHL team by using a pick that's really good currency in the NHL, right? Like, you can still land a hell of a player with number 10 overall. This is a pretty good draft. At the very least, it's 10, 15 deep. So you're going to be able to get a terrific player for the 10th overall pick if that is still in play for Jersey.
I like that team a lot, and they've got,
especially if Nemec, steps up this year, the young Slovak defenseman.
His rookie year was pretty good. If he's
decent,
if he's better than that next year, oh my God! Because between him and Hughes and Marino's solid, Siegenthaler's pretty solid. I mean, that's a good 4 there, and then they've got goaltending now, and they've got, of course, all their flash and dash up top.
Did you mention they're getting Hamilton back
and Dougie Hamilton,
right?
So
And I mentioned this jersey pick, not just in isolation, but the Senators have said number 7 is available. The Utah Hockey Club has said number 6 is available. Like, it could be a hell of a lot of fun next week at the Sphere in the early portion of the NHL entry draft.
Yeah.
Like, it is rare enough to see one top 10 pick traded. I think a couple of years ago, there was 2 top 10 picks traded because Columbus owned a pick from Chicago after they traded for Seth Jones, and then Chicago got a pick from somebody. But, you know, to actually see on the floor top 10 picks traded, you don't see that a whole lot. Arizona and the Rangers did it a number of years ago. I forget the forward who went Arizona's way. I want to say a center iceman. But you just don't see that a lot, and you could actually see that a week from Friday at the Sphere in Las Vegas when the NHL entry draft gets going. Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by Greta. 50 West Cordova, a great spot to catch the game throughout the season. Quick walk to the rink or stadium. A go-to spot for food, drinks, and fun before and after the game. Make it a game night at Greta, 50 West Cordova, or at gretabar.com. Frank Corrado is joining us here in a moment. Go down the Hronek deal with him. Talk to him about Guentzel. He played with Guentzel in Pittsburgh, so he's got interesting insight there. We talk about speed for Pettersson on the flank. Is that what the doctor ordered, or would that be wasted with Pettersson? And then we talk about, you know, top 6, top 9 guys, as well as whether or not you would pay for the exclusive negotiation rights of a free agent. All right, Bet365 time. Bets of the day. This segment brought to you by Bet365, proud partner, Sekeres Price. We're proud to have them aboard. I follow some of these golf models on social.
Yep.
You know, the sites that take all the variables into account, the course, what previous winners have done, and they spit out a who should do well this week.
Mm-hmm.
One of the models I follow really likes Corey Connors this week at the Travelers. In fact, he's their 5th choice. And I think one of the guys above him might not even be playing. He's the 13th choice on Bet365. He's playing well. He had a good U.S. Open. He's an elite ball striker. And let's face it, these greens will be more forgiving than the ones at Pinehurst number 2, which for a hot/cold putter like Connors, I think, more manageable. So I'm going with the Canadian Corey Connors on the Olympic team, right?
He is.
He's got that little pep in his step as well to win the Travelers at plus 3,500.
So Matt Hughes putt from last year, the year before, Travelers, big bending putt. There's Canadian juju there for sure. The Oilers have won back-to-back games.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd take a little peek at what's happening.
We were going to spend more time on
the
game than we were 2 hours late on the show. So we're just wrapping this up a little more tidily, everybody.
But the Oilers at plus 275
to win the series.
They've got some momentum, maybe.
Yeah, they're
going back home at the very least.
Momentum's not a thing. You've been telling me momentum's not a thing.
No, for the most part, it's not. Anything can happen in any given game, but they do have home ice for whatever that's worth. Mm-hmm. You don't have to put much down. That plus 275 to win the series for the Oilers.
Bet365. Open an account and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS. All together, all one word, when opening that account. Frank Corrado is next. And once again, apologies for our tardiness today. Northlands Golf Course. Download the free app and book tee times with a touch of your thumb. And while you're on course, open the app for hole-by-hole GPS and track your score. 6 to 90-day reservations. Jump the queue. Lock in your date for $10 per player booking fee. Limited daily availability. Check it all out. GolfNorthlands.com.
In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey setup as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova. The Vancouver Canadians are back at the net. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com.
Next guest is brought to you by the Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club, now playing in summer condition and to rave reviews. We played it last week and it was sensational. You know what else I did last week? They have Arnie caps.
Oh, yeah.
In the golf shop. I got one for my dad for Father's Day.
Oh, did you?
Well,
Nice.
he was a big Arnie's Army guy.
Yeah,
As is Al Chris Manson,
Yeah, for sure.
who runs the Whistler Golf Club. And with the extended daylight in June, take advantage of the afternoon twilight rates and the amazing evening sunsets in Whistler.
Some of the best screens you're going to find.
Honestly. And like Whistler shows well at any time of year, in any light. But some of the views from that golf course as the sun is coming down and hitting the mountain and everything just so. Wow.
It's just in primo condition, too. Go play it.
Book your twilight time or anytime during the 2024 season. Visit whistlergolf.com.
Remember when Frank Corrado used to play golf? Before the Twins?
Yeah.
Once upon a time. Yeah, I used to play golf. Used to get outside. Used to be tanned. Maddie, how you looking these days? You're not feeling your skin complexion these days.
It's been a bad spring. Right now, I'm more English Scottish than I am Hungarian, but we'll get there.
All right.
Frankie,
we'll be monitoring things.
Well,
we'll be
finally,
monitoring your sun exposure.
Yes, in Vancouver. Frank Corrado, former Vancouver Canuck TSN hockey analyst. So we got some meat on the bone today.
It's June 19th, and our Hockey News Cup runneth over. Frank, that's where we are at this stage in the game here.
So we'll start with Filip Hronek. What did you make of the deal for the Canucks and for the player?
Okay. Given the circumstances, and the circumstances being strong arbitration case, good partner for Quinn Hughes, 26 years old, right-hand defenseman who plays in all situations. Given all the circumstances, I don't mind the deal. If I'm speaking like preference, my preference would have been to get it done for under $7 million. Especially, when you hear about, and it's going to be different ages, but you hear about certain players like Slavin is going to sign an extension with Carolina. It's a very different player, but that's going to be in the sixes. There's going to be some players that are UFAs that are going to have the same type of impact as Filip Hronek does in Vancouver. They're going to sign in the fives and the sixes, but he's 26 years old. He had a strong case, and at some point you have to make a decision. Do you want good players that fit on your team, or do you just want to let young guys walk and take your chances elsewhere and have a lot of turnover? So I guess with everything considered, I don't mind it. I'm happy it's not higher. Like, I'm happy it's not up near 8. I think that's crazy talk that was ever even a thing. So the cap's going to go up. He's got to show that he can play, well for more than half a season. At some point, like we've talked about a lot this year, he's going to have to play maybe on a different pairing and show that he can anchor that and run that pair and be the number one guy. All things considered, I don't mind it. I don't love it, but I understand why it happened and how it goes down that way.
So if it's at 6.9, you're doing cartwheels?
I think if it's like 6.75, I'm probably, doing cartwheels. I don't know. It's just something about it being in the sixes made more sense to me. But it still fits another it fits another thing. It's under Quinn Hughes, so check another box that it fits.
Let me just take you on Slavin and some of the other UFAs. They're 30.
Yes.
26.
Yes, for sure.
So you're paying for better years, conceivably, right?
100%. I 100% agree. And the guys that are UFAs coming up are basically between 28 and 32, and it's very different. But now he's getting paid. Devon Taves, Morgan Riley, I don't know, all those guys that are in the $7 million range. So now the ball's in his court, and it's for 8 years, and be good. Like, be good for 8 years and make it worth the money, even though the cap is going to go up. Like, I don't know, make it worth it. The team has invested in this player now.
Yeah, that's it. Like, he's paid, and I've seen this written, that he's paid like a number one defenseman on a lot of teams, but he's paid like a number one defenseman in the first year of a significant cap jump and with future cap jumps to come. So the inflationary effect is there. Like, all number two defensemen are going to be in and around this number, I suspect, in short order.
Right.
No?
Quinn Hughes is going to be at 11. So, it's all going to slot in a little bit more logically in a couple of years.
One other thing on this too, like in the hard cap world that we live in, fans, media types, we get so invested in what is the number and how does that affect my team's salary cap structure. And for good reason, because we've been living in this flat cap world where, it seems like percentage of the cap never seems to go up, and all that kind of stuff is very prevalent. Now, at some point, an organization needs to decide, we want good players here. We have to pay good players. So that is I guess that's the baseline for what this is. It's like the organization has established that you're a good player for the team. Now you have to continue being that player. But it sucks when organizations go spend, $1 million, $1.5 million on defensemen. You know why? Because they're not any good. They're down at the bottom of the standing. So if your team has a chance to spend this kind of money on a player that they deem good and was, the evidence was there this season, these are kind of like first world problems of the NHL. Like, it's not a gross overpayment. And to me, it's a good thing, because now, you basically have, you have a team that's investing money in players that you should eat up great years and should lead to the team being good. Like, all this stuff should add up to the Canucks being competitive for a longer period of time, or at least hopefully the duration of this 8-year deal.
What's the next big investment from the Vancouver Canucks now in the wake of this? They have the cost certainty of Hronek. They have to write another big check. It's either to, and unless they get really creative, it's either to Nikita Zadorov, to Jake Guentzel, or maybe they go out and they flesh out the right side of the defense and get another defenseman. I suppose that seems to be the longest odds at this point. But I guess you could throw in one of the tier 2 wingers as well, a DeBrusk or a Teravainen or something like that. But where's the next big investment? Where should the next big investment be for the Vancouver Canucks?
Could it be, if it was going to be Jake Guentzel, I wouldn't be upset about that. And we talked about that last week. All the things, familiarity with everyone involved, gifted goal scorer, plays well in the playoffs, a winger to play with Pettersson. And then if that led you down to a road where you can no longer sign Nikita Zadorov, you take a look at the list and you say, okay, who is built like Nikita Zadorov? Maybe not the same player, because he's pretty good. Like, and what is he? He's a middle guy, let's say. Like if everything goes well, he's, he could play on your second pair, but if your D core is really good, he's probably on your third pair. So who is the poor man's version of Nikita Zadorov? Is it Joel Edmondson? And can you have him for, $1.75? Can you have him for $2 million? Like, is that how you structure things? Where you still get
Brenden Dillon as an option as well.
Yeah, like where you still get the big defenseman that Rick Tocchet wants and basically needs to have in order for his team to be successful, which is fair. Like, he's identified those guys. So that's kind of like, if you're asking me, I'll put more money in the gifted goal scorer, the more talented player, and I'll try and find a value deal on the big, rugged, brute defenseman on someone else, whether it is Dillon, like you say, who will probably cost a little more than Joel Edmondson, or, Joel Edmondson, who was making 1.75 last year. Like, that would be my list of priorities as far as how that sequence would break down.
I hear you. You played with Guentzel in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Tell us about the guy. What's he like? And then I'd love your scouting report on him.
He's awesome. He's a great guy. Very energetic, bubbly personality, personable guy. Like, he's going to fit in on any locker room in the league. He's going to be a very popular guy. And there's just something about, like, he loves hockey. Like, he's like not a hockey nerd. I don't want to call anyone a nerd, but he is like a hockey nerd. And he used to joke around with me a little bit after practice, because we would do our D drills, and when we would do our split, So I don't know if anyone doesn't know what a split is. It's like the D are at one end doing some D drills. The forwards are at one end doing their forward drills. For some reason, our D drills always finished first, and the forwards were still doing their stuff. I don't know. I would go down and do some stuff with the forwards, just have a little fun, work on something different. And for some reason, we'd end up doing this like one-timer at the side of the net, like a complete, power play, goal scorers kind of drill. And I'd be down there, one knee down, Steven Stamkos, like top shelf. And he'd always give me shit. He'd be like, "Oh, there you are, buddy, right in your office, right where you're going to be." Like, so he's that kind of guy. Like he's quick-witted and he's a really fun guy to be around.
Did you take one goal line one-timer in your NHL?
I don't even think I took one in my entire hockey career.
Oh,
like that's minor hockey, OHL, summer league, 3-on-3 summer league, like charity games. There was not one ever. Yeah, but I was in my office practicing it when I was playing for the Penguins.
Help me out on this. How do you think a $9 million plus contract will age with a guy who will be 30?
Right. That was my next question.
Yeah.
How does his skill set age?
Okay. I don't think Jake Guentzel was the fastest player. When I played with him, I never found him to be, a player with blazing speed. So I don't think like the legs are going to significantly fall off, and that's going to be catastrophic for him. Like I think his speed is his speed. Whereas, someone like Mikheyev, very different player, obviously, but when the legs fell off, that's it. Like that's what he had. So that's not going to be an issue for him. He's a shooter. Like his game has always been based around, how do I get my shot off? How do I kind of think about getting into positions to get my shot off? So as long as you're playing with, someone who can distribute the puck and someone who can find you and, an offensive zone kind of scheme that finds quiet areas of the ice, you should be fine. And at least that's probably, listen, if there's going to be term attached to this contract, I would imagine that's the case for half the contract. There's half of that contract that I wouldn't really even be afraid of. And I think there's a good example this year is what Steven Stamkos was able to do. Different players, different ways they attack the game. But Stamkos is 34, and he just had, a point per game season where he scored 40 goals, and he's been often injured. And Jake Guentzel has not really been, he hasn't been injured to the extent that Steven Stamkos has been. So I don't worry about it, especially in, if it's a 7-year deal, which would be a long time, years 1, 2, 3, and 4, I don't worry about it. And I think for, the Canucks, it's like they're trying to be good, now. So you're trying to catch that lightning in a bottle and see if you can grab the last 4 to 5 years of Jake Guentzel's, high productivity.
He's not an all situation swinger. He doesn't kill penalties. How is he defensively? Is he a guy that protects leads late?
I think he's fine defensively. The thing is, like, he's played with Sid so much in his career. So I don't necessarily, I don't remember Jake ever being a liability. Like, I never, even watching the Penguins when I was with Wilkes-Barre or whatever, I would watch every Penguins game. Like, I never thought of Jake as, oh, we're down into the last 5 minutes, so now Sid's going on the ice and Jake can't go with him. Like Jake would go. He would always play in those situations. And I think that the beautiful thing about, the Penguins when they were really good is the players on the third and fourth line, their roles were to kill the penalties, whether it was Rust or Rowney or Cullen or Bonino. Like, so was Jake Guentzel just going to kill penalties just for the sake of killing penalties? Or were you going to have the guys that were a little more suited to do it, because the roster was built that way? That doesn't necessarily mean he's a defensive minded forward or he's going to start killing penalties, but I do think he's not a liability the way some, super one-dimensional guys are. And, I feel like that is even dwindling a little bit because I think it's too competitive now. The guys that are really one-dimensional, they better be very, very good at that one dimension or ice time seems to shrink up on them.
Back to the speed element for a second. Devil's advocate here. Alvin all talked about the need to want to get faster for next season. Guentzel's he's faster than Besser, but he's not a Blazer, as we talked about. Does that concern you? You're investing this much and you haven't yet solved the winger speed issue, which is certainly a concern for the Canucks because they are not a fast team.
Not really, because I think if you're just going to sign guys that skate faster, I think you can find those guys on lower cap crunch AAVs, lower in your lineup.
Have them as the hustle forecheck guys, and then have these guys.
Yeah, like you'll find those guys that just kind of buzz around. Like, I don't know, take your pick. Like there's let's say the Tyler Motts of the world who skate fast and get in on the forecheck, who like you know what that kind of game is. You'll get some speed that way. The other thing is, if he's going to be playing with Pettersson, let's say, it doesn't make sense to have a guy who skates 1,000,000 miles an hour playing with Pettersson, where they're not like are they ever going to be like on the same length of making a lateral pass? You know what I mean? So having someone who moves in that kind of speed, and we're not talking about slugs.
No,
we're just talking about guys that aren't the fastest players on the ice. And to be honest with you, your best plays are kind of made at that like 80% speed range. So that's like, I don't see an issue with that, because I think both those guys will play at the same kind of pace if they were to play together.
McDavid and McKinnon are the only guys that can make the plays at their top speed, and that's why it's so special.
Would hold on? Would McDavid and McKinnon even work together? Like would it like if they played on the same line?
If only
would that work?
Yeah, sure McKinnon could hack the wing. Let me just ask you this: from the Alain Vigneault school of Burrows gets the Twins playing with better pace, would a winger not get Pettersson playing with better pace?
So who's your third winger? Like,
good question. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing. It seems Sedin few spots, right?
That's right.
So there was two Sedins, who were, and then there was Burrows, and then there was, I don't know. Like, I played at a time when Cassian got a run playing with the Sedins. Like, there was always,
let's say
Burrows
for
was the guy. Yeah.
Let's say it's Garland, for argument's sake.
Yeah, I don't see why not. Like, is he not?
I just, Alvin talking about how he needs, name checking speed is one thing that he wants to add. And of course, we know Elias isn't the fastest. Brock plays with JT. So, I've just found myself wondering, like, does the same logic apply to Elias that applied for the Twins all those years ago with Burrows, right? That gets him playing with a little bit more pace. Can still do the half court thing, once you get your controlled zone entry. But, because that's the other thing. Tockett's looking and doing a deep dive, he tells us, this summer in terms of how to generate more rush chances. And so, following up on Blake's question, I'm just wondering, does the speedy winger not achieve the more rush chances? Does it get Elias playing with more pace? Is that really what he needs to unlock him a little further?
It's not a bad thing to have that one guy who can buzz around. Like, he still needs to be able to play with the puck. Like, he can't be playing with the butt end of his stick. Like, that's still going to be more important. But having a guy on, like, if you had a guy on every line who was the faster guy, who was a little more of the grunt work guy, like, it's the reason why Zach Hyman worked so well with Matthews, and he works so well with McDavid, and guys like a guy like that works well with star players, because it's not really pretty what he does, but gets in on the forecheck, beats out icings, kind of like is willing to go from corner to corner, kind of willing to be the guy going a back check first. Like, that guy, and Zach Hyman is not available. And I don't even know what the poor man's version of that would be this year. But there's a lot of value to that. I kind of wonder about a guy like, and we were talking about UFAs last week, and we talked about Teravainen, we talked about Arvidsson, and who was the other guy we talked about? I think there was three guys. Jake DeBrusk. Like, our Arvidsson he's making something in the fours this year. Like, if there was any world where you could grab that guy for, and this is probably crazy talk, I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. If you could grab him at a cap hit, I don't know, we'll call it $3 million. Is that not a guy that you think, even though he's a little older on a shorter term deal, can he buzz around? Can he be that little bit of a, an energizer? So maybe in that situation, like I think that was the one I kind of poured cold water on last week because we were talking about them as an individual, but maybe placed in that role, that's the one that kind of makes sense. There is something to be said for having that kind of player playing with skilled guys.
And like the debate that Blake and I have been having this week is it Guentzel, or you're better off spending $9 million on a $6 million winger and a $3 million winger and sort of rounding out your top 9 a little better.
No one will ever say that they didn't try. If you sign Jake Guentzel and get a fair market deal, let's say, like no one can ever accuse the Canucks of saying, oh, they held money back and they weren't really all in. Like that's, I don't know, all these kinds of things, re-signing Pettersson to the cap hit you sign him at, re-signing Hronek, all these things kind of signify we're in this and we're serious about being not only the best team in the Pacific, but, trying to push for a Stanley Cup, which, like you lost out to the Edmonton Oilers this year, and they're playing for the Stanley Cup now. So, I mean, they're obviously on the right track given the way things went this year.
So the other question to ask yourself if you're the Canucks is, not only does he fit, not only should we devote that much of the salary cap to him, are we so hungry for him that we're going to peel off a pick to acquire the rights to talk to him before everybody else? It is a not often used route for teams because you get to chat with everybody right before the deadline anyway. But I guess if you can peel off a 4th round pick and sign the guy in 2 days, that's preferable. But is it worth it to you?
No, it's not. I think it's nice if you can get it done. I don't think that's something that needs to happen. Like, I'm not going to start any kind of like tampering thing here, but like put your objectively speaking glasses on, okay? All the players in the NHL are represented by, I don't know how many agents. Like there's not a ton of agents.
No, of high-powered agents. No.
They're all talking to GMs every day. You don't think there's a little bit of like a check-in happening on each guy? Like, come on. So that's kind of, it would be, I don't know, unless you were gonna give up the pick and then completely overpay to get that guy because you didn't want him kind of going to market. I wouldn't be willing to do that. I'd kind of roll the dice a little bit. Not that it's even rolling the dice.
Last question. What do you make of the Markstrom trade?
Yeah. Another defenseman coming back to Calgary, Kevin Ball. He's big. The 1st round pick for Calgary is going to be good. They're going to like that. And New Jersey, which, I mean, it sounded like he was heading there at some point this year. It's a good return for Calgary. It makes sense for New Jersey because they lost so many games because of bad goaltending this year. And I just hope for New Jersey's sake, obviously, hopefully Hamilton can play because that's big for them. But I hope the age demographic of their young blue line matches up with what Markstrom can kind of bring to the table behind them, meaning they're young. Like Nemitz is young, Hughes is young. I can't remember who else is there, but like they've got some good young players. And that's not what's holding them back, but they could have used Severson this year. As much as Graves didn't have a good year in Pittsburgh, like they probably could have used 2 years ago Graves, and that would have helped them. Like ultimately the goaltending was what killed them. But if Nemitz and Hughes and Hamilton is back and those guys all take a step forward, they have the makings of a team that should be good. And I'm very intrigued by them because, Sheldon Keefe knows how to coach skilled players, especially in the regular season. He's coached Matthews, Marner, Nylander, all 2 career years. So that'll be interesting to see how he does that with Bratt and Hughes and the rest of that supporting cast there. Sheldon Keefe hasn't really had a goaltender like Jacob Markstrom as an NHL coach.
No.
Like he had Freddie Anderson towards, Freddie was struggling to stay healthy, let's say. Then he has Jack Campbell. He's got Samsonov, Joseph Wall. Like, I'm so interested to see how a Sheldon Keefe run team with the ponies that Sheldon Keefe knows how to run operates with a goalie that can be a Vezina caliber goaltender. Like that's
a good team.
I find it very intriguing.
Yeah. And you know what? Calgary could have, you want to believe if you're Calgary that you get more. But honestly, there's a world if Dustin Wolf makes the step, and let's face it, he's graduated from the AHL, like 930 save percentage of plenty at the AHL level. If he makes a step, I don't know that they are that worse of a team defending, especially with Kevin Ball added. Like there's a world in which they got a free first round pick here, and they don't get demonstrably worse, if at all.
And where's Calgary going this year?
Yeah, exactly.
They're in that middle. They're in that middle ground because they have too many players tied up to long contracts that are aging, but they're not going to be able to get rid of them. So they really can't start the full youth movement yet. So they're kind of starting that youth movement on the back end with the guys that they brought in, whether it was Miramanov, who's actually a little bit older, Grushnikov, who they got for Tanev. Now they got Kevin Ball. So they're starting to build this kind of younger, bigger decor. And like Calgary is going to be in that weird, 11th place, 10th place. I don't know. So did you need Jacob Markstrom to achieve that this year? No. So you got a first round pick and you got an NHL defenseman, a young NHL defenseman who happens to be a tree. So I think that's a pretty good return if you're Craig Conroy.
Glad you're one of our ponies, Frank Corrado.
Never a thoroughbred, but always appreciated.
Good pony.
I'm not so sure about that. Good luck to your Italians.
Yes. Thank you. Grazie. Forza. See you, boys.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well.